Nothing boils my blood more than the mega carriers and some of these stupid things that they do. But sometimes in life, you gotta do what you gotta do to get where you want to go. And sometimes getting your CDL can be like that. The federal government has recently made it harder to get your CDL. You need help. You need driving test. Driving Test has developed a hassle-free online course to help you get your ELDT certification and pass the CDL exam. Driving Test is approved by the FMCSA and is America's #1 online CDL training program. Check them out at drivingtest.org. Now, as much as it rots my socks to say this, sometimes when you're trying to get your CDL and you're completely out of all other options, going to work for a mega carrier to get your CDL and get some seat time is a viable option. Now, you know that I do not like mega carriers, but this is one way to go. It's kind of a last resort way to go, and there are a few perks to going that way. Mega carriers have good equipment generally. They have terminals all over the place, so there's probably one near you. Mega carriers always have lots of work and lots of loads, and that's good job security for a new driver. And mega carriers generally are fairly forgiving and easygoing with minor damage or minor incidents for new drivers because, frankly, they're just kind of used to it. Now, the mega carriers will all want you to sign a contract for the training and for the driving. And these contracts are all very different, so you've got to read them all and kind of shop through them to see which one's going to suit you best. But they all have one thing in common, and that is that these contracts are legally binding, and the carriers will hold you to the conditions of these contracts. So you've got to go in with your eyes open, be aware of what the contracts say, and choose the best one that's going to work for you. Now, mega carriers lately have this new training style where they like to put you with another driver with only a couple months experience and have you run team and have you learning as you're driving. Stay away from a mega carrier that does this type of system because you're not learning anything that way, especially when the guy with only a couple months experience is in the bunk. Mega carriers have other ways to train you. Do not go for this over-the-road team long distance type of training. All sorts of guys are getting hurt doing that type of training. Something else you need to know, at the end of your training, when they've decided to hire you, they're going to want you to sign a contract again, and all sorts of them will say, well, we don't have any openings for a company driver right now, but we are hiring lease operators. Be polite, but walk away right away. Say, no thank you, but that's not what I want to do, and walk away. And most of the time, the mega carriers will call you back in a couple of days and say, oh, okay, we have a company spot that just opened up. But do not ever get into one of these lease programs with these mega carriers. At the end of the day, trucking is a tough business, and the mega carriers are one of the toughest trucking businesses out there. So they're going to use you, but if you can use them to your advantage to get more seat time and more actual behind the wheel time, then it's a fair trade-off if you play your cards right. Now, in all fairness, I've talked to guys that have gone to work for mega carriers and gone and run their local boards so they could be home at night, and some of those guys have ended up with really good jobs. So sometimes that's not a bad option if they can pay you well and get you home every night. All sorts of guys are looking for that type of thing now that the over-the-road trucking is collapsing. Now today, if somebody came to me and asked me, if it were you and you were new, would you train with a mega carrier? And I had to think back years to when I was young, and I thought, you know, the bottom line was when I was young, I would have done anything to get that license. And if it meant training with a mega carrier, that's what I would have done, because that was the end goal for me. Get the license. If you have to put up with some crap, that's fine, as long as you get the license in the end. Back many years ago, there were only a few mega carriers out there. JB Hunt and Schneider, and I can't even think anybody else right now back then. But there were no cell phones. There were no ELDs, there were no satellite tracking, and the only way that those drivers for Schneider and JB Hunt could communicate with their terminals was to carry a roll of dimes, find a payphone somewhere, and call into dispatch every morning to let them know where they were and what they were doing. Now, as these mega carriers were growing, and they were growing quickly, it was not uncommon for these mega carriers to lose track of their trucks, their trailers, and their drivers, sometimes for days at a time, because there were just too many to keep track of. It was the days before computers, and they just couldn't keep it all in their heads. So it was not unusual for guys to decide, well, I'm out on the West Coast, I'll take in a little sun and go on a little vacation. And they would forget to phone in for a couple days, and that was forgiven, and they weren't even missed half the time. And back then, even the mega carrier guys were making enough money that they could afford to take a few days off at Disney World or go golfing or something like that. So that's how much times have changed. You'd never get away with that kind of stuff today, driving for a mega carrier. They're just on you 24/7. But back then, when trucking was a more relaxed thing, it was kind of a cool thing and a cool way to go. Take care, keep the rubber side down, and I'll see you on the backhaul.